Hello Pop Tarts, Tea and Tarot is back. Yes, I went on another hiatus. Don't ask me why, I really don't know. Something about me like gravitates massively towards the project and then kind of casts it aside callously and then gets back on board with it again. But I really would like to make a Tea and Tarot for every Saturday, and that's my plan. That's part of my overarching mission. And this is a topic that I've been wanting to discuss on Tea and Tarot and draw some cards for a really long time. So I'm finally kind of getting down to the nitty-gritty of doing that. My tea for today is intensely blackcurrant and rhubarb, and it is very intense. Although I have to admit something, it's so bloody humid in this country today that I've actually started on the fruit water as well, because it's really cold and refreshing and I need cold and refreshing. So essentially I've got a hot and a cold drink on the go, which is actually something that I love doing, but I don't normally do for tea and tarot because I've become a bit of a purist. I've tied myself down very much to my own concept, so this is going to be somewhat like the bastardization that occurred when I drank coffee during tea and tarot, except it's going to be like fruit water and tarot, so hopefully you don't resent that too much. I'm absolutely spoiled here, spoiled for choice. I should get some vodka on the go and make it a hat trick. Okay, so the first thing I want to talk about is the fact that the word drama has kind of become a blanket term for anything which is messy as heck and involves like two people or more and is just basically a bunch of raw emotion and potentially backstabbing, gossiping, not necessarily behaving in alignment with our highest selves, etc. and so on and so forth. And actually I think that blanket statement does a disservice to the complexity of a lot of what is going on, and it can be used and kind of hurled towards certain people and situations as a way to demean them. And my intention with this episode is to kind of bring light to that and to the complexities of those kinds of issues, as well as to help you kind of amass some tools to deal with any quote unquote drama that you might be going through in your own life. And obviously everybody's definition might be a little different, but I think it's really important to insist that we don't just use the word drama to callously dismiss anything which is messy and ugly in the human condition that we don't want to deal with, that we want to turn our backs on. But at the same time, a lot of quote unquote drama is unnecessary and unbecoming behaviour, normally fueled by ego and normally involving at least two or more parties that really could just walk away, release whatever is going on and behave in a more adult fashion. So obviously that is where the term drama has kind of come into popular usage and kind of like common vernacular, and I am going to be approaching that side of it too and giving you some tools to help you deal with any drama that might be going on in your own life at the moment. Nine of Swords is my first choice because Nine of Swords is really about perspective and blowing things up out of all proportion. And a lot of the time that's what's going on when you are facing drama, when you are embroiled in drama, or when you feel like you are being the mediator or the go-between in somebody else's drama, you know, the extra in somebody else's play, the pawn in somebody else's chess game, if you will. Quite often we look at something and the more we give our focus to it, the more we amplify it, and the more we amplify it, the more it starts to take over our reality and become synonymous with our very reality. When in fact, if we really looked at it and broke it down, we would recognise that we're responsible for where we place our focus, and a lot of the drama that's occurring is normally occurring or being blown out of proportion in your own mind. Sometimes your mind can be your worst enemy, and sometimes you're just looking at something from a very skewed and histrionic and overtly dramatised perspective, and it's on you to own that and to decide to shift your focus so that you're looking at things in a different way, so that you're looking on the bright side of things, or so that you are focusing and channeling your energy on something that is not drama. You know, quite often we have to appreciate that where our focus goes, our energy flows, if you will. And sometimes we have to appreciate that we are being embroiled in the drama and we're giving a lot of our energy, a lot of our attention, a lot of our emotional resources to it. And so of course it starts to become bigger, it starts to be fed, you know, it's like an egregore, and it feeds off of our attention and off of our energy, and it becomes this overwhelming thing. But we have to accept our own accountability for that. So really I think the Nine of Swords just basically asks you to check in and appreciate where you might need to shift your attention elsewhere. quite often we talk about how this figure in the Nine of Cups in the traditional kind of Rider-Waite imagery has woken up from a terrifying nightmare, as having some kind of night terror that has just ended, and they are just like, you know, there with their hands over their eyes as if to say, I really can't look to, you know, I don't want to know whether or not what I saw in my imagination was real. But actually, if they opened their eyes and they confronted their fear, they'd realise they were in a dark room and everything was just in their imagination, and it's all about perspective, and it's about not allowing yourself to get so wrapped up in what we would call emotional reasoning. So the metaphor of waking up from a nightmare is useful for this, but let's go into what emotional reasoning is for a second. Emotional reasoning is what we would call a cognitive distortion in some areas of positive psychology. It's basically where we imagine that the way we're thinking about something is obvious and sane and in alignment with reality, but actually it's massively skewed, it's distorted. It's like you're thinking through a hall of mirrors. What you're actually perceiving is not what's actually there. And there are many different cognitive distortions, and I'm going to talk about them in a video at a later date. But just for the purposes of this video and for the theme of this particular card, emotional reasoning is where you assume, falsely, that your emotions are a good barometer for what's actually occurring. So if you feel really, really bad about something, really desperately guilty about something, or ashamed or embarrassed, then you assume that the strength of that emotion conveys the sense that it must be true that you ought to feel ashamed or embarrassed. The same way, if you're really anxious and you're really, really scared of doing something and you have a lot of complexes around it, or indeed a phobia kind of hanging over your head with regard to it, emotional reasoning would be that condition where you can't step back from how you feel about it, where you think that your emotions and reality are synonymous with each other. You think that they're one. So you think that as scared as you are about the situation is as scary as that situation really is, when quite often we know, right, that that is not the case at all. And a great many things that we're afraid of are really not scary, and actually in reality don't pose any threats to us physically or emotionally. The way in which emotional reasoning works when we're dealing with drama is that the way that the drama makes us feel is not necessarily a barometer for how bad it is, or for what we're able to necessarily do about it. If you feel trapped, if you feel unable to deal with things, if you feel unable to walk away, or you feel very demeaned or undervalued by what's going on, it doesn't necessarily mean that those things are true, okay? Your emotions are not always a good barometer for the truth. It's important to experience your emotions, feel your emotions, but also obtain that objective distance from your emotions. Recognise that they don't have to be in the driver's seat all the time, and they're not necessarily a decent barometer for what's going on. You have more choices, you are more empowered than you think you are, especially when it comes to how you choose to deal with drama, okay, and how you choose to empower yourself to respond to whatever is going on that you would consider to be drama. I do love the rhubarb and blackcurrant, and it's good and everything, but I'm just so it's just so humid. I just love this right now. This is really rocking my world right now. It's got orange and kiwi in it, and it's just perfect. You might ask me why I'm wearing a jumper if it's so damn hot. And I guess I don't really know. I just love this jumper right now. So, you know, there's nothing else that is available to me that's this colour, so I'm just going with it. It's all about chromotherapy, people. It's all about chromotherapy. Sometimes a colour just calls to you, and you can't consider whether or not it's too hot or cold to wear the thing. You just have to wear the thing. The Devil is the second card in this episode of Tea and Tarot because I want to convey and I want to stress to you the fact that there's something quite tantalising about drama. There's something quite addictive about drama. There's a junk food, high E numbers, kind of delicious, salacious aspect of drama. There is that quality to it, and quite often you will find yourself feeding into it. You will find that it is entertaining you, and so you in some sense want to prolong it. You will find that you are enjoying judging those who are embroiled in it, and so it is in your shadow side's interest to somehow maintain it or give it momentum. Be honest with yourself, go into deep self-inquiry. If you are finding that you are in the midst of drama, even if you are insisting that you are not interested in this drama, that this drama is destructive, that this drama is even boring to you, if it won't seem to go away and you seem to be becoming very enmeshed in it, consider what it is that prevents you from sidestepping it or walking away from it, and be really honest, you know, because you could be on what I like to call the BS carousel and feeding yourself excuses as to why you need to be embroiled in this drama constantly and why you need to talk to so-and-so about what so-and-so said about so-and-so, and You know, you might be telling yourself, well, if I just have that one more conversation, then it will iron everything out and then everything will be sorted. But deep down in your soul, you know that that's not correct. You know that there is something tantalising, there's something that you're wanting to nibble on when it comes to that drama. And quite often when we kind of bask in drama, when we marinate in that drama, when we want to, you know, check our email or check our Facebook to see a little bit more of that drama, or go around and tell somebody what so-and-so has said about somebody, actually there's something missing in our own lives. There's a sense of passion and intensity missing. And when that intensity and that passion ship is missing, you know, that fire energy, that primal spark of fire, we can start to try and find it in really crappy ways, you know, like breaking the speed limit, driving whilst drunk, you know, sleeping with people we know we shouldn't be sleeping with. And getting embroiled in senseless drama is one of those ways in which we try to toxically create that sense of that primal creative fire energy, that joyous, exciting spark of creativity. But actually we're just getting it in a really crappy way. And like I said, junk food, E-numbers, it's not doing us any good. So I think really the devil quite often asks us to go into self-inquiry. I think the devil is very much a card about shadow work. I think the devil is very much about compulsion and addiction and negative cycles that have been allowed to go unchecked under the radar for perhaps too long. And actually when the devil comes up in a reading, it's so much that invitation to self-inquiry that I don't think that can be overlooked or ignored. And I think where drama is concerned, everybody who is even remotely involved, whether they're on the sidelines with popcorn watching it, and be honest if that's you, or whether they are literally enmeshed in it, embroiled in it, at the centre of it, everybody could do with a little bit of a dose of self-inquiry where drama is concerned. So I think the devil works perfectly in this kind of capacity with that message. Don't get stuck in the middle, don't be the middleman, don't be a pawn in somebody else's chess game, don't be an extra in somebody else's very dramatic soap opera style narrative. This is really important, and I chose Five of Swords, which I think would be everybody's obvious choice from the right away, either the Five of Swords or the Five of Wands, but for me the Five of Swords quite often represents a mediator. Like this guy picking up the swords after the battle is quite often described in books of definitions and so on as the mediator, the person who tried to get these two other people to sort it out, but then ultimately failed and is now kind of picking up the pieces. So there is that sense of there being a mediator style energy, the archetype of the middleman, the mediator, the person who's trying to kind of sort it out from both ends and see both perspectives. And actually, although that can be very honourable and a very admirable position to be in when drama is occurring, it's often also just a really ugly space where you feel like you have to placate both parties involved, where you feel like you have to say what would satisfy and appease one party, and then you have to go away and say what would satisfy and appease the other party. Actually, what you're doing then is you are involving yourself directly in the drama, and you are not aligning with your spiritual principles, and you're probably not being the best and most upstanding version of yourself in that situation. It can be really, really easy to want to say the thing that is going to satisfy one hurt party, and then going to the other hurt party and saying, well, I can see your point of view too, and I can see that obviously that person has wronged you. But very quickly you realise that you've become the man in the middle, you have become the person that is kind of being disingenuous on both sides of the equation, and that can be really ugly. And even if your intentions are good and pure and righteous, you will find in the end that it doesn't make you feel very good about yourself. If you have to have an opinion about something that's going on that could be considered to be drama, then I would recommend being true to your word, sticking with your opinion, and sticking with your opinion no matter who's there. You know, but it can be very easy to get embroiled in saying one thing to somebody else, saying a different thing to somebody else, and actually becoming so enmeshed in the drama that you're not really sure what your opinions are anymore, and you're not really sure what it is that you're doing or what role you're supposed to be playing. So be clear, be authentic, be honest with yourself and other people. Like I said, if you have to have an opinion, have that same opinion no matter who's around. Make sure that you are not allowing your opinions and your beliefs to be up for sale. Make sure that they are not fluid and changeable, dependent upon what kind of company you're in or who's around. That's where you start to become disingenuous, and that's where you start to become part of the problem. So that's a really important thing to note. I'm sure that some of you thought that this might possibly be an episode where I didn't use one of my classic doubles, but actually I am going to double up. It just seems to be something that I've got to do. It's a long-standing tea and tarot tradition. So for this double up, I'm going for the 4 and the 9 of cups. I'm doubling up with 2 from the same suit. Cups, as many of you will already be aware, are representative of the element of water, and water is quite often linked to the depths, the oceanic depths of the psyche, and the fluidity and changeability and adaptability and mystery of the emotional spectrum. And that's very, very appropriate for my next point, which is learn your lessons. Take what you can take from any drama which touches your life, which affects your life, and which you find yourself embroiled by. No matter what kind of role you've played, whether you've been the mediator, whether you've tried to be the peacekeeper, whether you've been an agitator, whether you've fed the drama, or whether indeed you caused the drama and started the drama and you own up to that and put your hands up to that, whatever the case may be, there are lessons to be learned. Drama can be valuable. We can crack it open and we can obtain the gold. The Four of Cups is, again, just an image of self-inquiry, I think, and it's a literal image of self-inquiry. It's about really going deep to find the answers to the questions that are beneath the surface, the questions that are infinitely more important than just whose fault was it, who started it, or anything of that nature. You know, where does this person's loyalty lie? Those questions on some level may seem important, and those questions get a lot of energy invested into them during drama. But the deeper questions, the more profound questions, like what does this tell me about the nature of my own psyche? Where might I be repeating patterns, you know, that have long since been cast in the iron and maybe now need to be brought to the surface and examined so that they can ultimately be integrated and therein released, you know? It's about shadow work, it's about psyche diving, it's about owning up to your part in something and actually looking at not only the situation that's playing out right now, but how that situation that's playing out in the present is linked to other stuff from the past, stuff that you haven't worked through yet, other relationships that you maybe don't want to look at, avoidance patterns that you have that have been going under the radar. So it's really that image of deep self-inquiry and actually finding the gold. Quite often with the Four of Cups, we say that this guy is in too deep a state of deep inquiry. So he's kind of self-inquiring to the point where he's missing out on the essential lesson, and that cup that's kind of in front of him is that central lesson. I think that's fine, but there are many other ways to see the symbolism of this card. Sometimes I like to think of the Four of Cups as the notion of using the third eye, or of going within, because you're not going to be able to see the answer with your two physical eyes. So the fact that he's got his eyes closed and he's in that state of deep meditation, and there's that cup coming through kind of in front of him from midair, that to me is this idea that he can see these cups on the ground that are in the physical realm with his physical eyes, but the answer that he wants doesn't come from that external stimuli. It's going to come from somewhere really deep. You know, that cup that is aloft in midair, that's a cup of some kind of metaphysical quality, of some psycho-spiritual quality that can't be seen in the physical and can't be grasped with the cognitive. So that's why he's closing his eyes and he's really going in and he's finding the core and he's finding all of that wisdom that is in that deep bottomless well that can't necessarily be grasped in the physical but is there in the intuitive, in the instinctive, in the psychological sense. So it is kind of that message of deep inquiry. The Nine of Cups I often feel is an image of emotional intelligence, and I know I quite often grasp for this definition, but to me it makes so much sense. I feel like the figure in the card is really kind of he's sitting in front of all of the emotional lessons that he's amassed and the emotional intelligence that he has and that astute way that he has of tapping into his emotions, feeling his feelings, but recognizing that he is not his feelings. You know, that to me is a big part of what emotional intelligence is about. And if we allow ourselves to learn the lessons from drama, then we can become more of that figure. We can become more of that person who's so in touch with their emotional spectrum and understands the greater implications of what drama can mean and what drama can teach. I chose Temperance for the kind of guardian angel or guiding force or the kind of wisdom, that higher wisdom. That was what I wanted to tap into with Temperance this time. And what I want to come to here is just this reminder for anybody who might be going through drama or trying to release themselves from drama or really distancing themselves from somebody else's crap, is just to remember that sometimes, in some ways, you are being called upon to help in a guiding capacity. You are being called upon to be the light, to be the lighthouse, you know, to open up that spark of light and to be that person who guides and who holds space and who listens. quite a lot of the time drama can be doused, the flames of drama can be doused by less talk and more listening. And if you notice that people are trying to talk over each other and everybody's trying to have their say and everybody is like, you know, freaking out about it or making statuses about it or making videos about it or whatever the hell, everybody seems to want to talk and to put across their opinion. Sometimes the best thing is just to be silent, to stand back, to not give your fire energy over to that lesser intention, and instead just to hold space, create space for people to almost burn themselves out with their own passionate energy for the subject. Quite often the fuse just burns down and then it goes out, right? And sometimes you just might be called upon to hold space in that situation, or even just to allow people to offload, but not necessarily to give your opinion in return, purely and simply just to hold that space and to be that compassionate person, to understand that one of the best things about being spiritually centered and having some sense of spiritual astuteness during things like drama is that you can quite often stand back and recognize that more judgment, like piling judgment up on top of judgment, not going to be helpful, not going to go anywhere good. So instead, you know, refrain from judging people who are experiencing drama or are embroiled in drama. Recognize that there is probably something missing for them in some sense, but again, not in any judging capacity, just in the capacity of good humor, good nurturing and compassion. Understand that sometimes you might be called upon to be the light or to set the good example, or just to ensure that you are not feeding into the drama yourself by piling judgments on top of those people. You know, we've all been there, we've all not behaved as the best version of ourselves sometimes. And sometimes it's important just to think about what you can do. What energy do you want to bring to it, you know? And that, you know, for you, being the figure of temperance, bringing that angelic, that spiritual, that metaphysical, that higher kind of awareness to it, might simply be as easy as clicking off of a channel where drama is occurring, not getting involved with it, not saying anything about it, not feeding into it. And quite often I feel that's where a lot of my temperance energy comes from, with anything going on online, offline, with friends, with family, any of that crap. A lot of my desire to come back to that temperance energy is really just about not wanting to be a part of it and actually graciously and humbly bowing out, just saying like, I don't judge you, and if that's what you need to do, or that's what you need to say, or that's the energy that you currently feel you need to hold, I respect you, I honour you, but I am not going to be involved because I feel like I'm just going to be putting more negative energy on top of more negative energy. So respectfully and without judgment, I graciously decline to be involved in this. And that to me is that temperance energy, you know, hands down. And think about how you want to carry that in your life, and think about where you're not carrying that in your life that you really could be right now. I'm back on the blackcurrant and beetroot, and it's just bloody stunning. Romany from Romany's Realm actually told me to drink, I think it was the strawberry and raspberry with ice. That's what I ended up drinking anyway. She said, like, make yourself a strawberry and raspberry Twinings tea, let it cool down, and then put ice in it. And I was like, ooh. And I did that, and it was sumptuous. It was so good. Finally, I don't think any discussion about drama or any advice piece about drama would be complete without asking you if you are the common denominator, and asking you to go within yourself and ask yourself that question. And this is something that comes up with so much different advice, you know, so many different people will tell you to do this, and I think it's very valid and I think it's a fair point. And I chose the Hermit to make this particular point. Because the Hermit is so much about going away and doing the work, you know. And for me, the Hermit is so much about silence, and it's so much about just listening to what is internal or listening to what is omnipresent, and kind of elevating your attention to that state for a while in order to find answers that can't be found in any other way. And the Hermit is without a doubt solitary. The Hermit is without a doubt somebody who has stepped away from the world, who has stepped away maybe from material pleasures or from human communication, all of that kind of thing. And the metaphor of the Hermit, the metaphor of the seeker, of the ascetic, of the yogi, you know, really can help us to tap into the honesty that we need to have with ourselves sometimes. A lot of the time, the outside noise, the outside drama, the opinions from different people and all that kind of stuff can really allow us to avoid what's really going on at the core. And my advice to you to end this episode of Tea and Tarot would be that if you consistently find that you're embroiled in drama, you consistently find that drama is a part of your life, or you seem to find that you can't seem to release it or walk away from it, or that there's always something happening that's just raising your blood pressure and making you feel super stressed or paranoid or insecure or angry with people, Ask yourself if you are the central spoke of all of this crap. Ask yourself if you are the common denominator. And this is really about shadow work. This is really about being so honest with yourself and seeing yourself in perhaps the kind of light that you don't necessarily want to see yourself in, but maybe you need to for a while. Maybe you need to be really honest with yourself about what you are bringing to the proceedings that is causing drama to either start or is kind of causing it to keep its momentum, or causing it to go out of control, or causing it to occur for longer than it needs to. Sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves about where we are feeding the flames, fanning the flames, putting gasoline on the flames. And when you go deep within yourself and you decide that you are part of the problem, that's the only point at which you can consciously begin to aspire to a solution. So just remember that, and just remember that it's the beginning of great things. If you recognise that you are part of the issue and that you need to go away and change what you're doing, and you need to be honest with yourself about that, then you're already on the way. You've already started that journey, and it's going to be an awesome journey. Don't forget that I'm available for readings and counselling sessions and tarot mentoring and stuff like that. You can check out my options below. There are going to be some changes coming with regard to the business side of what I'm doing, and I will let you guys know and keep you informed as to what those changes will be. For my clients, for people that trust me to read for them or do work with them, for people that have been working with me on an ongoing basis or have ever come to the shop and purchased something from me, thank you so much for your support over the years. It's been an absolutely amazing ride. I am getting ready to fly the coop and start selling from my own website as opposed to Etsy, and I'm considering different changes and thinking about what the future is going to entail for me as an intuitive spiritual counsellor, as a tarot reader, and all the rest of it. So I really hope that you'll continue with me on the journey. I am very, very excited about it, and thank you all so much just for supporting me and watching my content and inspiring me and spurring me on. And until next time, very, very much love. Blessed be.